Good afternoon, everybody. We've made it to Italy, and today is the Giro's birthday. 105 years ago, the first Giro d'Italia left Milan at 3:53 a.m. on the 13th of May, 1909. We've had all sorts of history happen throughout the years. This race intrinsically links to the country's history. Today, we're linked to the Irish weather still. It's grey, it's overcast, there's a possibility of rain in the southeast of the country. We're in the region of Apulia. However, we've brought the Irish weather with us. A little warmer today, 24 degrees and 15 degrees difference than we were in Dublin the other day. But the bad weather is forecast. Circuit racing to come. It's going to be exciting. We have news to bring you about the favourites, including one high-profile withdrawal. So Bari awaits. And this is how it happened a little earlier today. You could see the first spots of rain starting to fall as they rolled out in the beginning of the 112 kilometres from Giovinazzo, just up the road. Not too far indeed from where we finished today, but 8 laps of 8.3 kilometres await the riders. The man in pink, the one leading the race, is Michael Bling Matthews. And he's really taken that name to town. He's got the pink bike and just about everything there. There's Luke Durbridge wearing the best young riders white jersey as well, the Australian, in conversation with Alessandro Petacchi at the beginning. Marcel Kittel, though, stage winner a couple of days ago, did not start. Bad news for him. More about that a little later on. We said that people may well get ill, get colds. I'm afraid that is what has happened. Two-time stage winner out of the 3 days. But Marcel Kittel does not start. It's already 3 men down into stage 4 of the Giro. This is what happened the other day. Kittel on the left-hand side, sprinting home in that points jersey in Dublin. 2 wonderful performances from the German. The man who turned 26 on Saturday, unable to start here on Tuesday. So we're told he has a fever and is unable to take part. There's Svein Tuft as well on the right-hand side, the man who wore pink on day 2 of the Giro. Once the flag was finally waved, we were off in the rain, albeit, but off for another sprint day. Oh, so we think on the Giro d'Italia. These are live pictures, just 4 kilometres into the race. The road's very, very slippy. We've lost the man we expected to be the favourite today, Marcel Kittel, 26-year-old who won 2 stages already in this race, 7 wins this year. Another day, another milestone for him. Day after joining the select club of those that have won a couple of stages on all 3 Grand Tours. The German became the first man to win an individual stage on his birthday since Evgeny Berzin did in 1995. Roberto Visentini and Fabio Baldato also did that down the years as well. Svein Tuft, of course, winning on his birthday, but that was a team achievement. The man on your screen there with 1:58. However, all of that happening early on, Kittel deciding that he could not continue today. That's a real shame. Sean Kelly's still alongside me, and Sean, as we see another start in the rain, some things change, the country does, the countryside does, the temperature does. The rain's the same though, and as we suggested the other day, it may well start to claim some victims. Today it has. Well,
I think the conditions we had back in Ireland, would claim some riders. I think with the transfer back from Ireland down to Italy, 3 days in the rain, and not only 3 days in the rain, the 2 previous days at least, the teams were there trying to train in bad conditions, and we always hear people getting colds, but a big disappointment to see Kittel going out so quickly. He was performing so well and going so well, because the sprint he won in Dublin on Sunday afternoon was, an impressive performance. But when you're at your best, that's the time you're most vulnerable, and the conditions not helping at all. And the question is now, there is riders in there, I'm sure, carrying a little bit of cold. Hopefully we don't lose some more. And unfortunately, the weather conditions that we had in Ireland, they're following the riders around. And here, the riders would be expecting nice warm conditions today, but unfortunately, temperature's a bit better. 24 degrees we're hitting, but still the wet conditions, and it's going to be so nervous once again today, as it has been all the way from the start of this Giro.
Well, we've seen crashes already in Ireland. We've seen a bit of danger today, Sean, because of the fact it doesn't often rain down here in southeast Italy. When it does, the roads really aren't prepared for it. We've got circuit racing, almost kermesse racing today. 8.3-kilometre circuit around Bari. It's a short stage. No racing yesterday. There's going to be plenty of energy and will to win stages in the legs. It could be even more dangerous today, couldn't it?
Well, it will be more dangerous today because, you know, here in Bari, not raining, you know, very often. They're probably hearing the riders this morning, well, it hadn't rained here for months, and I remember back in my time, you go to some country and they say, well, we haven't seen rain here for 3 months, and the bike race arrives along and then it's just raining, and it is going to be slippery. You can see the roads here already, you know, they're very smooth, and when you get into the city, the buses, the bit of oil is going to be treacherously dangerous, and having to do 8 laps of this, just over 8 kilometres, it is going to be a difficult and a real nervous race again today.
Well, we're leaving Giovinazza at the minute. Town of 21,400 people. There's Tyler Farrer right at the back at the moment. Already a few riders just taking it easy to start. We've had no attempt at a breakaway today. Now, we've heard a few nasty rumours this morning, haven't we? We've seen the state of the roads in Bari. Farrer already not looking particularly happy to be out there in the rain. A lot of riders just working their way into the stage today. We make our way up into the town of Bitonto, where Farrer won himself 3 years ago, I think it was. Yes, 3 years ago. Down in Bitonto. Day that Julian Dean did one of the best lead-outs I think I've ever seen on the Giro d'Italia in the last few years for Garmin. That was a different Farrer, a different era for him. Today, everything looks a little nervous. He just wants to get through this Giro, get to the harder stages, which he thinks he'll better win, the harder sprints. Today, though, it could be a very, very difficult day. I said we've heard a few nasty rumours, and they concern the fact that a few of the riders might not be happy with the slippy roads here and may be thinking about riding a procession-style race.
Well, if we have anything like the roads we're seeing here, the big flagstones, and we can see the riders, you know, are very, very careful getting around here. When you get onto a finishing circuit and you have to do, you know, a lap, sometimes we see the times being taken a bit further out. We've seen that in the Giro a number of times, because the technical finish today, it is a very technical one. Again, in dry conditions it would be technical, but in the wet conditions it's going to be treacherous, and we're hearing rumours that the riders might not race on the final circuit. I'll not be surprised, because, you know, it's going to be fucking mayhem if they do race around the circuit, because you always have guys, you know, who will take a bit more risk, want to getting a stage victory. But the general classification men are thinking long term, so it's you know, it's going to be an interesting one. Will they race in the end? I'd not be surprised if the riders say, well, with the team directors, with the race director, that they come to some agreement where they only do a number of laps, or maybe they take the time for the overall classification as they enter onto the circuit finish, and maybe do a number of laps then. Will they do all 8 laps? We'll have to wait and see.
We certainly will. What we are seeing at the minute is no real fight to form a breakaway. They're just riding a very, very slow tempo on the way out of Giovinazza. And you could see at the front of that line, you had the elder statesmen, the bosses of the Italian peloton. Ivan Basso was on the left-hand side in the green, well into his 30s, a 2-time winner. Luca Paolini, one of the most respected and liked members of the peloton, as we see a model mudguard there on the back of the bike that is being ridden by a rider from Katusha, who is Eduard Vorganov. And alongside that, we had Alessandro Petacchi, 40 years of age. Will the decision about whether we race today perhaps be taken out of the organisers' hands and made by these men at the front, Sean?
Well, I think the riders, they will be thinking of safety, and yeah, they will be in discussion with the organisers, and as you said, the riders who are on front, it's interesting to see that, you know, all the older riders who, you know, will be you know, trying to take a bit of control at the moment. I think that's what they're doing. Paolini, of course, we've seen him on the rear of the peloton more on this race, but he's up the front today in the start, and that says maybe there is some agreement there that they're not going to race. They may be hoping that the weather conditions will blow off and it dries out, but for the moment, you know, we don't see any attacks. That we haven't had that in the start in the last number of days. They've always been attacks very earlier on, so maybe we will see the race to neutralise, and hoping it gets better conditions.
That's exactly what we normally see, of course. Early stages, people wanting to get out, short stages. For the minute, it looks neutralised. We shall see. We're off for a quick break, and we're back in a minute to tell you more. Well, we're apparently going to go for one. This was, of course, a little nervous moment a moment ago. 128 there is Fran Ventoso, another man, another sprinter. just making his way across the slippery cobbles here, pardon me. And this is what we're seeing on the front of the peloton. Again, all those very, very important riders. Bernie Eisel's come to the fore as well, another respected rider, having a chat with Luca Paolini. Alessandro Petacchi still up the middle, Svein Tuft, another experienced rider. All the older guys gathering there at the front with a couple of the jersey wearers. Luke Durbridge is there as well. Salvatore Puccio coming for a chat too, and we're seeing everybody lining the road at the minute, and it's not unexpected whatsoever, certainly given the fact that the roads are very, very slippy and even dangerous here. Well, the route is due to take us through this town of Molfetta up to Bitonto, olive oil capital of this particular part of Puglia, down in the southeast of Italy.
Hope it's not on the road.
Let's certainly hope it's not on the road. But you made a very good point about the oil. Certainly the city's going around the bus is going around the big city of Bari. The oil that hasn't been washed off for months, maybe. We're about to see how it goes. We are going to go for a break now, and we'll see you in just a couple of minutes' time. Good afternoon. You join us on stage 4 of the Giro d'Italia, stage at the moment that looks neutralised. We had these rumours all throughout the morning when the rain began to fall in Bari. The roads were very, very slick indeed, that there wasn't going to be any real racing done. That is because the riders are understandably concerned for their safety. Our situation may change if it stops raining and dries out. At the minute, nobody's in a panic to try and get in a breakaway or anything. There is Miguel Angel Rubiano, the Colombian champion, who was in the break in Dublin, alongside one of the riders from La Française des Jeux. 98.7 kilometres theoretically remain, and now these rumours that have been circulating all through the morning through the peloton have now extended to the media, and the Italian media reporting that we are probably going to do the 8 laps around Bari, but the race may be neutralised with all the same time gaps taken once we get onto those 8 laps. For the minute, it is as if it were neutralised, without the official word. No riding is being done. On the left-hand side, in the black rain jersey, and of course the red shorts, you can see one of the elder statesmen of the peloton, one of the most respected figures, 37-year-old Luca Paolini, riding just his second Giro d'Italia, but he's been around a long time. He's next to the man in green, who is one of the favourite stroke outsiders for this race, Ivan Basso, 2-time winner of the Giro. Alessandro Petacchi, multiple stage winner, and of course the only man, or one of the only men, pardon me, in the peloton, certainly the only man in this particular group riding this race to have won all 3 points jerseys on each of the Grand Tours. He's on the right hand side. Svein Tuft in the middle, who was wearing pink the other day, and of course the pink jersey wearer at the minute is Michael Matthews. Looks as though there's an agreement being made. Sean Kelly, if the weather stays the same, will there be any change, or will this stay through to the end, on your opinion?
Well, depending on the weather conditions, of course. If it does dry out, well then, you know, they will race in the end on the circuit. But the big concern is the circuit, the 8 laps of just over 8 kilometres. That's where the danger is. And you know, we probably will be hearing why did they not race to the town where they're finishing. But if you allow them to start racing, there's a breakaway 5-6 minutes ahead. The breakaway is not going to slow down, so the bunch has to ride behind to try and catch them in the end. And you know, then you cannot control it. And what we're seeing here is, you know, the old statesmen, they're on the front here, they're controlling the situation. And you know, there's no attacks, as we can see here in the earlier part. When we get to the finish, if the weather continues, I'd not be surprised if we see a number of laps being taken off, because now we're going to lose time here, which had been neutralised. They're not racing. They're probably racing at 35 kilometres an hour here, but normally they would be going at 55 kilometres an hour at this moment. And that's where the danger is. If you go in the start, and what we've seen from the moment they've rolled out, if you go at 55k an hour into the corners, it is very dangerous. But if it was a race from A to B, for example, well then they probably would race. It's just the circuit finish in Bari, that's where the concern is, and that's where the problem is lying.
Of course, the circuit is a little technical. There are oily roads, slippy roads, roads that don't take rain very well and don't get rain very often down here in Puglia. Michael Matthews just comes out to change his position. I think he'll be looking for a rain jacket pretty soon to cover up that pink jersey. He was saying that he was pretty disappointed the other day, saying that he wanted a race in pink. He had to cover it up on his way into Dublin. He's certainly gone for the full works, the full bling, as his nickname certainly lends itself to. He's gone for the bike, the handlebar tape, just about everything. Thinking about today, obviously, if we don't get any racing, he will stay in pink for tomorrow, as we see a number of the riders choosing this quiet moment to take a natural break or two. Thinking ahead in the race and just ignoring this situation for the minute, Sean, Tomorrow we're going into Viggiano, pardon me, and we're going to see our first few ramps of the race. Can Bling Matthews hang on tomorrow? We'll be seeing him in pink maybe for the last day tomorrow on this Giro d'Italia.
Well, I think Matthews, he is a good climber. He can get over, you know, some of the more difficult sections, and I think tomorrow he will be maybe wanting to hold in there. The final run up to the finish, you know, it's not too long. I'd not be surprised if he just hold on tomorrow. You know, when you're in yellow as well, sometimes we see riders when they're sprinters, they do not really, you know, hold on the climbs. But when you have a leader's jersey to defend, it's amazing how well they can ride in climbs. And I'd not be surprised if Michael Matthews doesn't hold on to his race leader's jersey tomorrow.
Well, a couple of more difficult days coming up tomorrow and the day after. Tomorrow we go to Viggiano, the day after to Monte Cassino, the scene of that infamous battle 70 years ago in World War II. Michael Matthews today leads by 8 seconds from Alessandro Petacchi. Petacchi, mathematically, if there were to be a race today, he'd still be the only real danger, because even bonus seconds today for the likes of Ben Swift, let's say, the next nearest threat in a sprint, would only take him to 19 seconds away. So it's looking good for Matthews today, unless Alessandro Petacchi does win, if we do have a race, and takes those bonus seconds as well. That's Davide Apollonio going back for a rain jacket. I think when they got on the plane yesterday, and yesterday morning in Dublin, they thought they'd be leaving the rain behind, didn't they? A word on yesterday, Sean. A very, very early charter flight out from Dublin, around 3 hours down to Bari. It seems so impeccably organised by the race organisers, RCS Sport. They were actually the team buses allowed onto the tarmac at the airport. No passport control, no baggage check. As soon as they got off, they walked straight under the buses. Now, we'll have a word about that in a minute. What's happening here, Sean? Is Paolini negotiating with the organisers?
Yes, there's a discussion going on here, and we can see it looks like one of the possibly the commissars on the rear of the motorbike here having a chat with Pauline to see what the plan is, and I'm sure they are concerned as well, because the riders, you know, as they started out, maybe, you know, they were not make the organisers fully aware that they were going to ride along at an easier pace, so it's realised very quickly that they're not going to race, and probably just want to relay the information to everybody. And as we had, the rumours were earlier on, and you know, they've been going around, but exactly what way they would do it, would they race in the earlier part, or would they just neutralise it right from the start? But yes, yesterday morning it was, you know, really well organised, as it was all over the first couple of days, Belfast and through down to Dublin. And the riders, you know, yesterday morning when they woke up very early, blue skies, it looked very good. I'm sure they were saying, oh my God, you know, we've had this bad weather here and we're leaving, it's getting good back here in Ireland. It didn't last for too long. I heard from people, I was talking to people, it didn't last too long into yesterday. There was a lot of showers once again, but the riders would be expecting, you know, better conditions. Normally down here, you know, there's so many months of the year where they never see rain, but unfortunately it's on the day that the Tour of Italy arrive here.
First time we've been into Bari, I think, since 1990 today. Stage finish itself in there. As the under-23 world champion from 2010, Michael Matthews, 18 victories so far in his career, some of them coming this season earlier on. As Svein Tufte was in pink the other day on his birthday, the Canadian, 37 years of age now, one of those experienced men right at the front.
And at least for Michael Matthews, he can show off his pink, as you said. In Dublin, the stage back in Ireland, it wasn't possible because the temperatures was, you know, too cold. But here, well, unfortunately, it's wet, but the temperature is 24 degrees, so it's good, and it's not a problem to go without a raincoat. And I think, you know, we'll see a lot of the riders going through the day without it. 24 degrees. It's comfortable, even though it is wet.
Cadel Evans there, one of the favourites for the race, one of the big winners of the first few days. Although he did lose a couple of seconds in the third stage. There are actually splits in the peloton. Michele Scarponi picking up 11 seconds on most of his rivals in that technical and fast finish into Dublin in the end. But I think Evans at the end of it was saying, well, he was quite happy to get out of the Irish stages without any major damage or any major dangers. Joaquim Rodriguez wasn't a particular fan of starting that race up in Ireland. He was joking on social media saying, well, why don't we start in Hawaii or somewhere like that? Again, it didn't particularly suit his style of riding, so you can understand him having a moan, but of course races are there to suit everybody, not just the explosive climbers at the end.
Start in Abu Dhabi.
There you go. Next time we're in Dubai, apparently, anyway. Quick commercial break for us. 92 kilometres remain. We're in Italy, I promise. We've brought the weather with us. Mitchell Docker there. We're not having racing at the minute. It is as simple as that. We've got a neutralized stage, not officially so. However, the riders have decided that for them it is too wet for any racing to be taking place at the minute. We've seen all the experienced men at the front. We have a stage without Marcel Kittel, who's the DNS today, did not start. Such a shame for the rest of the race, really. 26 years of age, has taken a little bit of a fever on his journey now to Italy. Now, Sean, if you're a director sportif yesterday on transfer day rather than rest day, what sort of programme would you have put your riders through to ensure that they'd arrive today in the best of health? We saw Orica Greenedge going out for a ride just an hour or so after they'd landed. Would you have done something different, or would you have kept them away from the bikes for most of the day?
No, I think you need to get out on the bike. Being in the wet conditions, more so, you need to turn the legs, and after the plane journey as well. And of course the riders, anytime they take a plane journey before an event, they try and get out and do a ride. In a normal rest day in a Tour of Italy or a Tour of France, they go out. You know, you arrive at the end of the stage the previous day and you're in your hotel, but the next day they go out and they do 2 hours, 2.5 hours. So, you know, nothing different here, and maybe the bike ride a bit more needed, because when you go on the plane you have a bit of the heavy legs afterwards. So certainly everybody was out yesterday, and that goes back for many years, that the riders on the rest day, they always go out and do a bit. Riders differ. Some like to do a small bit, which will need an hour. Some riders like to do quite a long ride, maybe 2.5 or 3 hours. So everybody different, and you know from experience, from feeling coming up when you're younger, what you need to feel good on the following day, and they just go out and get that done. And that's part of the job, part of a 3-week tour.
Svein Tuft at the front. Pace seems to have picked up a little at the minute, but there's certainly no racing going on to a proper extent, because we've not attempted a breakaway or anything at the minute. It's such a shame as well, Sean, because we don't often get to televise this part of the race, which can be one of the most exciting parts of any race.
Well, unfortunately, yes, it's very rare that we get the start of the race. On the occasions we do, sometimes we see some, you know, fabulous racing, because there's a lot of attacking, and you know, the first 40-50 kilometers could be very aggressive, and it makes for great racing. But we see Orica Greenedge are taking control, of course, with, you know, the race leader jersey with Michael Matthews. They're going to do that, and now the question is, when we get onto the finishing circuit, will the time be taken as we enter the first time, and will they go on and race then? And it's, of course, then it's only for the stage victory, because the overall classification men will not have anything to worry about. That is something we'll have to wait and see what exactly will happen here today.
Well, I'm casting my mind all the way back to 2009, Milan. Circuit that was deemed by the riders, once they got on it, too dangerous to take part in. That day, a man who we tend not to talk about too much, Lance Armstrong, got a lot of the flack for organising a neutralisation of the peloton. The reports are it wasn't just him. Again, it was the likes of Basso, other riders, senior members, figures in the peloton, likes of Marzio Proseghini, who was still riding then, of course, riding at the front, stopping anything happening. That day again was safety. And of course, we've seen it down the years. Riders in this sport, it's got the working class organisation of a strike, hasn't it? It's all come from the French cycling culture and the Latin cycling culture as well down the years. It's one reason why we love cycling anyway, because of how it can be organised. The riders look out for each other, look out for themselves. Again, it looks as though we're at the moment getting another example of this here, and you can start to see similarities to that long day in Milan.
Yes, very much so. And it's just an unfortunate one for the organisers that, you know, on the day that they're going to have a circuit finish, they get the rain to come down. And you know, if you were a betting man and you went to the bookies here, and you know, to get rain on the stage in Bari, I think, you know, you would get great odds that it would not be raining. So we'll have to see what happened, but it's just so unfortunate for the organisers and for the riders. I think the riders would like to race, but with the circuit we've got today, it's just not safe to do so.
We're hearing a bit of communication through our spies and diggers back in Paris in our Eurosport headquarters. We've been asking around the team buses whilst we've been talking to you. They've been making phone calls frantically to the press officers. We're told through the Katusha team, apparently, as we see Franco Pellizotti, the former Italian champion, running for Androni Giocattoli, that at the moment, if it doesn't stop raining, the likelihood is that the race will be neutralized from the first passage of the finish line on the circuit. First bit of mechanical, but no rush here for the rider involved. If that's the case, the race will be neutralized. The times for the general classification should well be taken from the first passage through the finish line. Does that seem reasonable enough to you, Sean?
Well, I think that's a reasonable deal, because then, of course, the overall classification is not going to be have to fought for on the final circuit, and the riders can go out and take take as much risk they like for the stage victory. So I think it's a pretty fair one. It's going to be an interesting one, because with this circuit, when they go about racing here on this final 8 laps, it is going to be hectic, because it's guaranteed that with the conditions we have here, there's going to be some spells.
Laurent Pichon, one of the more experienced riders riding for Française des Jeux. Oh, whilst we wait for any action to happen, let's have a final think back to the Giro's first ever Irish experience. Of course, I know that the organisers and the Italian papers seem to have been very, very positive of it. There's even rumours and talks that they already want to take the race back there, despite the fact that the next foreign start is rumoured to be Dubai in 2 years' time. Sean, you've had a couple of days to digest the thoughts, think about everything on balance. Of course, you're an Irishman, you have a great knowledge of the area and, of course, the sport. What are your final thoughts on the Giro's Irish experience, good or bad?
I think it was a real good experience for everybody. The organisers, the Giro organisers, I think the press, they were really happy with the turnout, the reception they got, and the people that turned out. It was unbelievable. I spoke to some of the people who are doing the commentary that were not in Belfast, and they said it was just amazing, the amount of people on the roadside. And when you look at the weather conditions, the way they turned out, but of course we don't mind the rain back in Ireland, because we have so much where it's norm for the people to go out and watch sporting events in the wet conditions. But there's a lot of talk about coming back, but it was a major success for everybody.
Beautiful, and we certainly hope that we will go back sometime in the future. So from the Irish greenery to the olive groves of Bitonto, we're heading into Bari at the moment. Bari, a city with a population of just over 300,000 people. There's Rigoberto Urán just being helped back up to the peloton. Everybody going back to the cars, making sure they have the appropriate rain gear. We touched on it the other day. We've seen the first evidence of the problems today, as we see André Amador, that the rain can get to you, can make you ill, can give you colds. We're seeing muddy faces, just about everything that we didn't want to see when we went back to Italy. Very old, traditional area of Italy, this. One of the largest olive oil producing regions in the entire world is Puglia. Plenty of vineyards down there as well. The climate obviously helps. And there's Bari in the background. We'll skirt around it to begin with, head up to Bitonto, just past the Bari football stadium, back down into town, and those circuits will last 8.3 kilometres each time. We've been told there are 8 circuits, but as Sean has speculated, if it's going to be a slow ride, everybody has television schedules to play for. Of course, the organisers will not want to upset anybody around the world. Press watching on, they want to look after their own image. We may get a reduction in the kilometres to go today. We'll see, monitor the situation for you. At the minute, we're talking 92 k's to go. And just as we saw in Ireland, a bit of rain doesn't deter people out there. They've waited a long time for this race to come back. Bitonto, and basically that's the square there where Tyler Farrar won just 3 years ago. And what a superb victory it was. Julian Dean, the Kiwi, riding for Garmin then, doing one of the best lead-outs uphill on a curvy, quite technical final circuit that we've seen in recent times on this race. A few riders coming to the front, doing what they need to do, still all bunched up, still plenty of conversations going on. It's almost like a bit of a recovery ride at the moment, Sean.
Yes, well, it is easy for the guys. They're just rolling along, so it's going to be a bit of a recovery day. And they're all just, concerned about the general classification. Men, I think, are the men who are really concerned. And but I think there wouldn't be anybody that would not agree to just neutralise it so far, then take the times and for the stage victory. They can, you know, race on the circuit for a number of laps. How many laps that will be, we have to wait and see. But when you look in Dublin, there was a lot of the favourites like lost, you know, a bit of time, 11 seconds. They all lost except Scarponi was the one who got in there with the leading group of 32 riders. But after that, you know, Quintana, Uran, Basso, Cunego, all the big favourites, Roach, Hejdahl, Joaquim Rodriguez, they all lost that 11 seconds. And you know, you can be sure they're thinking of the conditions here today, that if it was full-on racing on the final circuit, there would be some of the general classification men could lose a lot of time, and I don't think that is fair. You must remember that, you know, the risk they take. And if you look at the stages in Dublin, like, they took a lot of risk because of the wet roads. The early part of a stage race is always nervous. If it was, you know, a straight out stage today from A to B, they would race it, but unfortunately with the laps at the finish, that's the reason the riders have took the decision.
Riders taking it upon themselves to impose an auto self-neutralization of things at the moment, and looking at the conditions, you really cannot blame them. These roads are not used to rain. It's not the same as having rain on the road in both Northern and the Republic of Ireland. Those roads much better equipped to cope with it. We're in one of the poorer regions here of Italy. They don't need to replace the road surface as much because the weather is much kinder to them. One of the more technical parts of the course here, going through Bitonto and down into Bari. We're off for a quick break. More about the rest of the Giro, and we'll have a chat about the general contenders in a moment's time. Racing through the City of Olives, Bitonto, Giro stage finish with Tyler Farrar winning a couple of years ago. 89.1 kilometres to go on today's stage, and today's stage, if you're joining us a little late, seems to have been neutralised by the peloton. All the elder statesmen coming to the fore and having a chat. There's Bernie Eisel talking to Alessandro Petacchi. We've seen Basso there, Paolini there. Evans has been back to chat to the Italian television explaining what's going on. This is the Austrian champion Ricardo Zeudel. And of course, you can see for yourselves just how slippy those roads are. Yuika Arashiro is there in his Japanese national champion's jersey. Sebastian Chavanel, number 82. 93 there is Thomas Dekker. And Garmin already know, Sean, exactly what it is like to have lost a rider and a GC contender in this race. Alessandro Petacchi helping point out to the peloton a bit of the road furniture involved in Bari. This is another thing that will worry them here. And you managed to chat to Dan Martin the other day. How's he feeling?
Well, he was feeling down, of course. He had his operation on Sunday, and on Sunday evening we talked to him, and he was down, but again, you know, he said that, well, you know, he has to recover from it, and exactly what he's going to do at the moment, I don't think he has decided. Of course, this was his target for the season, for the earlier part of the season. Unfortunately, you know, that's bike racing. It all happened so quickly for him in Belfast, and he's talking about getting back on the bike then in a number of days, and that's something, when you talk to a rider, he's a bit down to start, but you get talking and you get into the conversation. He's talking about getting on the bike in 4 or 5 days, because when you have the operation you can do that. So he had the operation to get it plated, and hopefully he might take part in the Tour of France. If not, it will be the later on the year, the Vuelta and World Championships, of course.
This is the last kilometre, Sean, seen in the dry. Quite a few manhole covers there. Don't let me having nightmares looking at that. It's fairly straight for the final few hundred metres, but again, the road surface might be worrying. If there's a neutralisation, do you think there will be at least a fight for the stage at the end of that?
Well, I think there will be a fight for the stage. If they decide to race, there's always the riders who want to, you know, have a go, and you have some of the guys who are a bit more kamikaze than others, let's call them, and you know, they will fancy their chances. And you know, maybe the sprinters that are not really the real outside, the real fast men, they're a little bit off that, they're outside of it, and they feel they could, you know, have a better chance today. Now, of course, with Kittel gone, it makes things more even playing, because he was way ahead, and when we see the way he was sprinting in the, you know, the first 2 road stages, untouchable really. And if he was here again today for the flat stages, you know, everybody would be saying, well, it's a matter of who's going to finish second and third really, but it changes the situation. So I think there's more guys now thinking that they could get a stage victory here, and with the wet conditions, some of them will probably feel a bit more confident.
No worries in the peloton at the minute. Just an upping of the pace once they get out of town. I don't think there's any real racing going on. Perhaps just a will to get a few more kilometres done a little quicker on the open road, I think. Bernie Eisel chatting to Peter Veining at the front. In the meantime, it's lunchtime for a few of the Bardiani riders. Luca Paolini going back to chat to the Commissar. Shake of the head, nod of the head, a couple of hand gestures.
He looks afraid.
Don't mess with Luca. Looks even more mean with that big beard of his now. Well, he's nicknamed the Clown. Being taken seriously today. But they're on one of the wider stretches and one of the newer stretches of road here. She's driven down this a couple of years ago. Brand new road that leads from Bari to the motorway and then up to Bitonto. Some riders taking the longer way route around the rideabout. 86Ks to go. We talked about the Irish experience, Dan Martin as well. We had some other visitors in the hotel the other night, didn't we? Colombia. They know their cycling history, and they were all queuing up to have their photo taken with Sean Kelly. They were a good lot, and they were meeting the ambassador, weren't they?
Yes, they sure were, and they were all in great spirits after being out there for many days in the wet conditions, which the Colombians would not be acclimatised to, would not like. But you know, they were really, really enjoying the race. You could see that they loved the sport, and like the number of Colombians that are living back in Dublin were there. It was amazing. The crowd was around the hotel just to support the guys in the team.
Well, we wondered, we thought there might be family members who'd come along for the Giro with them, but we went across and had a chat and said, no, we all live here. They're waiting for the ambassador from the embassy to come across, and of course waiting to try and get their photo taken. In the end, it was the Colombian riders that were desperate to have their photo taken with Sean. They enjoyed the time. Sean enjoyed meeting them. We all did. And of course the Italian pride now on the side of these roads is evident for all to see. What we saw from those overhead shots from the helicopter is that there's definitely no pace on at the front, because the pink jersey out the back, not worried about the little gap up to the peloton in front of him, just chatting away and enjoying his afternoon. There's Peter Veining, former stage winner and pink jersey wearer at the Giro d'Italia, Tom de Gent, Alessandro Petacchi, and of course a few of the BMC riders as well. And as always on the Giro, remember that man, Marco Pantani. 10 years without him now. It's how the television are watching the conversations going behind. National broadcaster happy to have all their equipment back. Again, one of the huge logistical parts of having the Giro over in Ireland was the fact that the national telly had to do without a lot of their own vans and trucks. I know a few of you have written in on Twitter. Thanks for getting involved, by the way. Remember, you can write to us, #Eurosportcycling, @RobHatchTV. Any questions for Sean? We may well have quite a lot of time to answer them for you today. But first question that a few have asked us today is about the logistics. We touched on it briefly on Sunday, and the fact that these starts abroad, and certainly as far away as Denmark the last time, Ireland this time, they certainly benefit the larger teams rather than the smaller teams on smaller budgets, because they get to use their team buses. Generally they have 2 or 3 team buses, and most of the equipment that's going to be used for most of the Giro, Sean, has already been waiting in Bari and didn't even go to Ireland, did it?
Yes, that's the way they planned it. The big teams, of course, you know, they have at least 2 buses, so you know, one went to Ireland, and then when the riders went back yesterday to Italy, the other bus, when the truck, the mechanical truck, all was there in Bari, as was the same for the personnel. And speaking to some of the personnel from AG2R, there was, you know, some already down there, and a number went to Ireland. Some went back from Ireland to Italy, but then other ones went home. And for the big teams, it's a bit easy to do that. And I think the biggest problem is budgets to get, you know, your vehicles across. The smaller teams not having 2 buses, and we did see some of the small teams who have probably only just the 1 bus. They only had maybe a camping car over in Ireland. So it is a difficult logistic-wise for everybody, and for the riders, of course, as well, because you start the race, you do 3 days, and then you have a transfer again. Something, you know, some of the riders can tolerate quite well, but other ones suffer a bit more from it.
We're getting some more news through regarding today's racing. As we go past Bari Airport on the left-hand side there, that's where the riders arrived yesterday. Didn't have to go through passport control. those buses that Sean was talking about down in Bari are already waiting here. Thankfully for the small teams, they could get rid of the back of the cars and the caravans they were sitting in Dublin, trying to keep warm when we saw them at the start the other day. We're hearing news that once they get onto the circuit, they will reassess the situation. And the latest rumour that is gathering a bit more pace is that the final circuit will not count towards the GC. All the times we've taken then, and it sounds as though we may have a race on the final circuit. Of course, GC gaps will not be taken into account. Waiting official confirmation on that. Well, Ian's just written in saying that perhaps the riders could be accused maybe of overreacting here, saying after all they are professionals, they are there to put on a show. Do you see it like that, Sean, or is safety still paramount?
Well, I think, yeah, always I think it's a safety, and when you see the way they race so fast in the end of the stages, there was a lot of people in Dublin watching the stage on the last number of kilometres, and they were amazed how fast the peloton go by. And that's the situation. You're standing there, and they just in seconds they're gone by. And the unfortunate thing again, I don't want to keep on about it, just the finishing circuit here. That is the problem. But the riders are prepared, to still go out there and put on a show to a certain extent. And a suggestion was also thrown up there just a moment ago that why do they not just race to Bari and then finish there? But we see in there the spectators waiting on the roadside. They've been there for a number of hours and they want to see the riders a number of times going around, and that's what the riders are deciding to do at the moment, that they will decide to race for the stage victory. So the general classification men don't lose a Tour of Italy because of 8 laps here in Bari today, but also the spectators, they get the spectacle and they get the show. So the riders, I think, are doing pretty fair, and depending on the conditions, as they said, we will see when we get to the final circuit.
I think as well it's worth remembering 3 years and 3 days ago, we lost a rider here on the Giro d'Italia. Walter Velon sadly passed away, and again, some things, certainly human life, is a lot more important than a sporting spectacle. So any sort of accusations to the riders that they're not doing their job, I think perhaps slightly a little over the top. But of course, everybody has their opinions, and we want to hear your opinions on just about everything involving the Giro d'Italia today at Rob Hatch TV. But more importantly, remember, hashtag all your tweets, Eurosport Cycling. Then everybody who's in the conversation, watching us here on Eurosport this afternoon around the world, can join in as well. Young rider standing looks like this, with Michael Matthews leading it. Luke Durbridge is looking after the jersey for him today. He's 14 seconds behind. Julien Vermont in third, with Yannick Eisen and Rafa Majka in fifth. And Majka was one of those alongside Scarponi the other day who picked up those extra 11 seconds. Pink jersey classification, the overall classification led by Matthews. We've seen Martin Cialinghi in almost 400 kilometres of breaks over the first 3 days of the Giro d'Italia, 395 to be precise. He leads the climbers' standings. He has 12 points. We're being asked if Ben Swift is in the red jersey. He should be, but we don't know if he's got it on today, because Marcel Kittel was taken out so close to the end, not sure they could get the sponsor's name printed on in time. We haven't seen Ben Swift close enough today, and of course he's likely to have a rain jacket on. We certainly hope he does, because we want him to be fit and still in this Giro d'Italia. Super Team points standings have Sky earning more points than Giant Shimano so far. Cannondale in third, Orica fourth, with Frances Desjeux fifth. Androni and Neri Sottoli aggressive so far inside the top 10 in terms of teams' points. Ben Swift, there he is. We've taken Kittel out of the equation. A point ahead of Elia Viviani, with Buoni in third. It's going to be very, very interesting, because save Buoni perhaps, we hope we'll see all of those sprinters in towards the end of this race, and they certainly will be trying to hang on through those brutal mountains in the final week to take that red points jersey. It's raining here, Interesting how the teams approach it technically, Sean. We've been asked by Bike Monkey on Twitter, do the teams change their lubricant on the chains for this type of weather?
Well, they certainly do if it's going to be a wet day right through. Sometimes they put a heavier lubricant on the chain. Normally, you know, they put the aerosol is what they use, but on the wetter days they just put the old oil can. As we can see, there was some of the riders maybe coming back here already, and I think we will see a bit more of that as the day go on. And we see it also in the stages back in Ireland, where some of the riders came to the car to get the oil, get the chain re-oiled. But when there's forecasts of rain all day, there is a heavier lubricant used.
Plenty to talk about here on Eurosport Cycling. We're off for a break, but stick with us, please. See you in a moment. Welcome back. Cycling's an extreme sport, everybody. We mentioned it the other day. These conditions are pretty dangerous out there at the minute. Some people at home asking why we're not racing at the moment, why the race has been neutralized. On the final circuit in Bari itself, at the moment, the weather is simply too slippy. We're hoping that it's going to dry up, and we're getting good news here, seeing slightly drier roads. It has stopped raining just outside the city, but as you can see on that shot, a little bit of rain still inside Bari. The sun comes out, the road dries up. We're hoping that we can see some final racing, but of course safety's paramount. Riders, if they themselves decide that it is too dangerous to race, they will not put their lives at risk unnecessarily. Of course, that has to be applauded. Salvatore Puccia going back to the cup. Sebastian Henao as well, racing for Sky. 20 years of age, is the youngest rider in the whole of the bunch here. Out of Piton Topolomy, and we're on our way into Bari. We have 8 circuits of 8.3 kilometers planned today. Remember, Marcel Kittel was holding the points jersey before today's race, has withdrawn through a cold. He picked up an illness between that final stage in Dublin, where he put in that wonderful effort to win the stage from a long, long way back down. And of course, the flight yesterday, well, you've all been on planes. You know the things that circulate in the air. They're all the bugs you can catch. We saw special lubricant being applied to the chains before the break. Here's Cadel Evans having some lunch. He was very happy that he got away unscathed from those dangerous and nervous first 3 stages of the Giro d'Italia. Now, Nick on Twitter asking, would a GC contender breaking away be frowned upon? Would Thomas Vauclair stand for this nonsense? I think, Sean, you can explain to the viewers at home, but that's why the experienced men are riding on the front, isn't it?
Well, I think it's an agreement between a lot of the riders and a lot of the teams, and you know, when they make that decision, I think it would have went around through the teams just before the start very quickly, and if some of the riders or some of the teams hadn't heard about it for some reason, the moment they start the race, they roll out, the riders will start talking to each other, and of course then the rider can relay back to his director sportif, so it gets around to the teams very quickly, and nobody dare to attack when you have the riders of the calibre we've seen up front, the guys who've been there for a long time. I don't think even a Thomas Buckler would even have a try.
Tommy V, very much respectful of the tradition of cycling, despite the fact that he might not have too many friends in the peloton sometimes with all of his attacks. Bardiani team will be itching, waiting, ready to attack the next couple of days. Couple of lumps and bumps. Over the next 2 or 3 days, we have the first few parkour, not big, tough, hard mountains, but we've got little hills, and if the general classification guys decide that they aren't going to attack on those, I think that could be, Sean, when we're going to start to see those pro-continental teams from Italy really coming to the floor and trying to attack the race. And it was about this part in the race last year, and we started to go slightly uphill, that we saw them try to win the stages. Yes,
well, I think we've seen that right from the start already this year, where the smaller teams get into the breakaways. We had that back in Ireland, and we're going to have it over the next couple of days. It depends who is in the race leadership, and with Michael Matthews been in there, I think, you know, he is able to get up the smaller client quite well. I reckon Ulrika Greenedge will have the confidence in him, and they will continue to control the race over the next number of days and try and hold on to the jersey as long as possible. So it's not one of these days where you have a very difficult climb in the end, where the team of race leader, you know, decide, well, we're not going to hold on to it anyway, we'll ride a bit, because that's the normal thing when you have got the race leader jersey in your team, you control a bit, but you know, they just allow a breakaway to go away slowly, and then in the end they don't really want to close it down. It's a dangerous situation. I think the climbs to come, certainly tomorrow, I think Michael Matthews should be able to get through, and you know, they just take it day by day. And for everybody in the race, tomorrow's stage with the uphill finish, they'll be all seeing how they feel after being in the race with the wet conditions for the first number of days. Everybody will be just wanting to see how that climbing legs are performing.
Might be a nervous end of the stage tomorrow, we shall see. Ramps of 8%, but as Sean says, shouldn't be something that can put the sprinters that are here in trouble. Now that Marcel Kittel's gone as well, and that's going to change the battle for the red jersey quite a lot, because Kittel wasn't expected to ride the whole race, but in each and every one of the nailed-on sprint days that we had, he would have been a big favourite. That really opens it up to everybody else, and we might see those days hotly contested now. Well,
I think yes, there's a number of guys there now in the sprints competition that will want to, you know, stay up and stay in a good position and want to go on all the way in this race, and so it's going to make it a bit more interesting. I think with Kittel in there, he had already a big advantage, but I think before the Kittel had pulled out here, they would be making the calculation Kittel's not going to go all the way anyway, so that calculation would be in motion already, but it's going to make it interesting here. And for the sprints now, I think it's going to be a bit more even sprint, because you could see the way Kittel was going. You know, he was just going to, you know, beat everybody. When you see the sprint in Dublin, if he had got a good lead out, and that's something the team as well, they're doing a fair amount, but in the end they seem to be losing out in the final kilometre and a half. So it's going to be a bit more interesting today, the sprint, and there'll be a lot more guys saying now, with Kittel gone, will I have a chance of getting a stage victory or getting on the podium here today?
74.1 kilometres to go. Things are a little more strung out at the moment. Luke Durbridge riding a faster tempo at the front as we come on to the circuit very, very soon. In fact, 1 kilometre to go and we will be on the circuit. Road's drying out a little. The good news is, Sean, it's not raining at the minute.
No, it's not raining, but still, it's, you know, the road is it's a little bit wet in places, and that is the danger, because when you go through a dry section and then you get a wet patch, it can be much more slippy, but it is drying out. And of course down here with the temperatures 24 degrees, it can dry out very quickly, so hopefully it will, you know, it will dry off quite well, and whatever happens, it will make it safer, because with the wet conditions, it would have been, you know, always going to be very, very dangerous here when you start racing.
Back wheel problem for one of the Katusha riders. This is going a little quicker now. Ivan Santoromita there. There's the pink jersey of Michael Matthews. Brian Walsh wants to ask you, Sean, do the teams change their tyre size and pressure for wet roads?
Pressure-wise, yes. Tyres, no. They're just, you know, a little bit less pressure when they're going to be in the wet conditions. So we don't have the advantage like they have in Formula 1, where they have, you know, the seats wet and dry. It doesn't work in biking.
We haven't reached that stage yet. Luca Paolini. 1:47 behind, working for Joaquim Rodriguez. Called the time to had a puncher. We come onto the circuit, pace starts to pick up, and he picks up one now. No worries for him though. You can get the sense the racing isn't quite on yet, but the pace has picked up slightly. We're onto the circuit, and the first of 8 laps begin here. 8.3 kilometres each one. And again, you can see, Sean, why they're keen to at least ride around this circuit, because so many people have come to the sides of the roads, even the fact that it is a working day.
Yes, and yeah, that's something, you know, we have to keep in mind, that the people here are, you know, preparing for the Giro for many weeks. All the bike followers, sporters, they're out here, and yeah, it would be very disappointing if we had a number of laps here, at least for the spectators to have a look at their riders and their favourites going around.
18 times we've had stage finishes in Bari in the history of the Giro d'Italia, so it is an historic city, not just in the history of Italy or the region of Puglia, but also the Giro d'Italia. First ever winner, 1911, Carlo Galetti. The last one, Gianni Bugno in 1990. Beppe Saroni's also won a stage here. And we're seeing the rider from Belkin, number 143 on our picture now. Rick Flens. That's the athletic stadium in Bari, not the football stadium which Bari play in. There you can see the most important economic centre on the Adriatic coast, and we're a long way down the Adriatic coast. In fact, we're at the part of the heel that almost kicks out into the Aegean Sea, almost reaches Greece. But I remember when I was studying Italian at university, one of the first things we learned that there was actually a few towns right on the base of this region where they still speak a dialect of ancient Greek. It is that traditional in areas in Puglia. Back at the Peloton, a few of the team cars coming around. The roads really are starting to dry out here. This is better news.
Certainly better news. It's going to make it safer for everybody, and it's nice to see that we could have dry conditions, and in that way I think there'll be a lot more riders will contest, even if the time is taken for the general classification as we go through the finish line on the first time. If the roads dry out, well, then there'll be a lot of riders saying, well, it's not as dangerous and I can have a go here and try and make the race of the final 8 laps.
Need to find all those leaders in the peloton again. Another conversation needs to happen and be communicated back. Certainly an upping of the pace here in the peloton with 70 kilometres to go. .5 to go. Svein Tuft riding at the front, the pace slightly up, the team starting to form their formations, and it looks like finally with the roads drying that we may be about to get some sort of race on the Giro d'Italia. Certainly there is plenty of pace being up. There's no attacks yet, so there's been no word given by those masters, those controllers, those experienced men in the peloton. Mechanical problem for Jussi Vaikkonen, the Finnish champion at the minute. Be a skilled mechanic to lean out of the car, and certainly a brave man sure to do this.
Yes, and a brave rider to be able to sit on the crossbar and hold on to the car and handle your bike with one hand as the mechanic work on your saddle here. And it looks like that the saddle have slipped a bit, and the level of the saddle is gone out.
So I'll try to show you some of Bari as we make our way around the circuit. In through Bitonto into Bari. Bari's famous castle. There's the biggest church in town, which is the Basilica di San Nicola. San Nicola, the patron saint of the city, and football stadium named after San Nicola as well. Well, that torque wrench trying to get the right setting. It's a big job. Uh, 37.3 kilometers per hour, the average for the first hour, and yeah, it's okay for a neutralized stage, certainly. Anyway, we've seen them ride slower on days like this.
Yes, we have, and in the normal race, sometimes when they get a strong headwind, we have seen that sort of average. So it's going quite well. And as I said earlier on, these guys, they're riding along. I reckon 35k an hour in a neutralized. It's still a nice pace, and maybe it not have been any different if we had been racing right from the kilometre zero.
Well, if an early break had gone, then they certainly would have allowed them to get a fair bit of time in front. May not well be the case again. There is the Basilica San Nicola we mentioned, right in the middle of your shot there. Huge tower. Bari Vecchia, old Bari, the old city. Certainly worth a visit. Lots of beautiful fish by the seaside down there as well. You don't go to many places in Italy where the food isn't great, but Puglia certainly has its own specialities. Many of which linked to the sea. 68.4 k's to go. Strong out now, and some riding being done at the front. Pace being upped. And these roads certainly have dried out quite thoroughly in the last half an hour or so. The shots we were getting at the finish line when we first came to air were quite worrying.
Yes, well, they were very concerning for everybody, and the temperature is good here. As you mentioned at the start, about 24 degrees. So when it does stop raining, it dries out very quickly, and it's looking better as we get closer to the finish here. And it looked like we could see some interesting racing, and that wasn't looking that way in the earlier part, because it looked like low cloud. It seemed like we could have rain for all of the stage.
Lukashenko takes a jacket from young Ramon Carretero. Finally they'll get it off. the rider representing Panama, ready for action for Neri Soto. They'll be one of the teams looking to attack, if there are any attacks here, to get out in a breakaway. We're about to come across the finish line for the first time. .6 kilometres remaining. There you are, 900 metres to go. So a good look at this, and we're going to have a good look at the run-in and how that is dried out or not. And the difference here, this is much more covered by buildings. The sun hasn't really been on it, and we're seeing wetter roads going into the finish. Certainly to the bone-dry road we saw a moment ago, and as Sean mentioned, that can be a big danger.
And as we can see here, it is technical. You know, the final kilometre is a technical one, quite a few corners. In the dry conditions, it would be already a bit of a difficult one, but with the wet roads it would be impossible to do. But we can see here it's drying out quickly, and still with 8 laps to go, it looks like we could have dry roads for the end of the stage.
Well, 7 laps to go. Through they come. Smiles finally on the faces. A decent pace being put on. Peter Veining takes over at the front from Svein Tuft. Great applause from all those riders who actually got up there and out on their bikes today. As you can see, the road's still a little greasy, but drying up. Everybody in T-shirts now on the line, so you get an indication of how warm it is out there. 24 degrees. And the riders on their way through, looking certainly a lot more optimistic than it did 30 minutes ago. 66.3 kilometres to go at stage 4 of the Giro d'Italia, the first on the Italian peninsula itself in this race, after we had the start, the grande partenza of this 97th Tour of Italy on the island of Ireland. 66 Ks, no breakaway, no attacks yet. The racing has been neutralised, but the pace has been picked up, and things looking very much more optimistic. Not particularly optimistic for the giant Shimano team. They lost Marcel Kittel before today, unfortunately, the man who was in the red points jersey after winning 2 of the 3 stages so far. 26 years of age, 7 wins this year, 2 of those at the Giro. Giant, though, do have another ace up their sleeve. Luka Mezgec. You'd expect them to sprint for him, and a man who's been going particularly well. He really cleaned up on the sprint days in Catalonia, and when it comes to the medium mountain days, Sean, very much like Matthews and Swift, he's shown himself capable of getting up and over those and competing in the sprints. Yes,
I think they will be working for him. He's proved that he can, you know, manage quite well in the sprints, very, very fast. So yes, they have Mezgec there, and you know, Giant Shimano, they've come here with a team to try and win stages. So unfortunately for them, they've lost Kittel earlier than they would have planned to do. But Mezgec, I think, you know, he is a very good second in the team, and I'd not be surprised if we see him, you know, contesting big time in the next number of days for a stage victory.
Simon Geschke for those lumpy stages as well will be a very, very interesting man to watch, the German. An hour of 10 minutes of racing have gone. We left Giovinazzo, went up to Bitonto. And the pink jersey, well, not as pink as it was when we started. It's changed shade slightly. Alessandro Petacchi, on a day like today, he might be wishing that he was still retired. He's out there, though. He's been enjoying returning to racing with Omega Pharma Quickstep. He's been saying that. Hasn't yet really tried his hand in a sprint. But of course, before the end of the Giro, don't bet against the fact that he might feel good enough to have a go. Depends on how his leader is going. Entire team for this year, at least, seems built around Rigoberto Urán anyway, and that's paid off so far. Urán has had a good start. Probably the best of the big favourites, you'd have to say, so far, Sean.
Yes, well, he's got through the first number of days, difficult days, and still in there with the big favourites, got through quite well. And when you look at the conditions we've had in the earlier days, I think for the big favourites, they'll be all happy with the position they're in. They might have lost, a number of seconds, which they prefer not to do. But again, when you take the wet days and the crashes we had, you could end up losing, 2 minutes, a minute and a half, very, very quickly. So if it's only a matter of 10 or 15 seconds, then I think they will be all happy enough with that, considering the weather conditions.
Well, back in your day, Sean, you were much more well known for racing, of course, the one-day classics, Paris-Nice, the Tour de France with those green jerseys, and of course the Tour of Spain that you won. The Giro, you didn't seem to race as often. When you did race it, though, did you ever race down here in Bari? Have you any memories of racing in Puglia?
No, never raced that far south. Of course, I only took part in the Giro on one occasion, 92. It was with the Festina team, and the agreement was that it would go for 10 days in the race. And the reason for that is the organisers would not take the team unless I was taking the start. So it was a great race and a lovely race to ride, and I would have loved to have taken part in a number of times, but unfortunately the Tour of Spain was in the early part of the season. It was before the Tour, basically. I think it finished maybe 2 weeks before, so it wasn't possible to do Spain, Italy and France. So that is the reason Spanish teams I had to do the Tour of Spain.